And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story. A story about a city buzzing with a strange, nervous energy, and a tiny white pill that was supposed to make everything better. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you feel up to it, I'd love to know what city you're listening from tonight, and what time it is there. It's a nice thought. All of us finding this quiet corner together, from all over the world. All right, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. The air in Berlin tonight is thick with the smell of coal smoke and roasted chestnuts. It's late 1938. You pull the collar of your coat up a little higher as a sharp wind sweeps down the quay you are first and AMM, rattling the awnings of the grand cafes. The city is a contradiction. It feels electric, alive with purpose. New buildings are going up. They're clean. Severe lines, a stark contrast to the ornate facades of the old empire. Loudspeakers mounted on lampposts occasionally crackle to life with some politician's speech, the voice echoing and then vanishing into the rumble of the trams. But underneath it all, there's a hum, a jittery, high-strung tension, like a string pulled too tight. You're just a student, trying to finish your thesis. Or maybe you're a clerk in a sprawling government ministry, your days filled with the rustle of papers and the clack of typewriters. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you, like everyone else, are feeling the pressure to be better, faster, more efficient, to be a worthy part of this new, revitalized nation. The signs are everywhere, literally. Posters urge you to be strong, to be productive, to sacrifice for the collective. It's exhausting. You stop in front of a pharmacy, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. Tucked between jars of herbal remedies and boxes of aspirin is a sleek, modern display. The packaging is bold, black and white, with a name that sounds like a thunderclap. Pervitin. The advertisements call it awake-amine, a stimulant for the mind. They feature drawings of handsome, clear-eyed professionals, doctors, pilots, architects, looking focused and confident. The message is simple. Feeling tired, overwhelmed, procrastinating, Pervitin is the answer. It will banish fatigue, boost your confidence, and sharpen your thoughts. You've heard the talk. Your classmates are using it to pull all-nighters before exams. Office workers whisper about how it helps them get through a mountain of paperwork. It's the talk of the town, and entirely respectable. Over-the-counter fix for the modern condition of being well, tired. It's not seen as some back-alley substance. It's an emblem of progress, of science conquering the limitations of the human body. You even saw an article in a women's magazine last week, nestled between a recipe for apple strudel and a knitting pattern. It was an advertisement for something called Hildebrand chocolates. They were pralines, each one infused with a dose of Pervitin. The ad showed a smiling housewife, effortlessly managing her home, her children, and her baking. A little box of these special chocolates on her kitchen counter. The slogan was something like, "For when the housework gets you down. A little pick-me-up to keep you smiling." It's a funny thought. A chocolate designed to help you scrub the floors faster. You walk on. The idea of the little pill lingering in your mind. It seems so tempting. Everyone is rushing towards some grand, unseen future, and you feel like you're struggling to keep up. This city, this entire country, is wound up, but to what end? Historians, a century from now, will still be arguing about it. Were people truly swept up in the nationalistic fervor, a genuine belief in the grand project, or was it something deeper? A collective attempt to outrun the ghosts of the last war, the poverty, the humiliation? Was this frantic energy a product of genuine enthusiasm or profound, Unspoken anxiety. There's probably no single answer. For now, you're just one person in a sea of millions, feeling the pull of the current. You duck into a little bar for a final drink before heading home. The radio is playing a swing tune, but the men at the counter are talking in low, serious tones. Their conversation is full of names you're starting to hear more and more. Czechoslovakia, Poland. You feel a familiar knot of unease in your stomach. All this energy, all this manufactured focus and sleepsons, it feels like it's building towards something. It feels like the whole country is holding its breath, and you wonder, as you finish your drink, if that little pill in the pharmacy window isn't just for studying or housework, but for getting ready for something else entirely. That name, Pervitin, it sticks in your head as you walk home. The syllables sharp and precise. It doesn't sound like a medicine. It sounds like an invention. Like television or Zephyr. It feels new. And it is. You piece together what you know from newspaper articles and the endless chatter in cafes. This wasn't some ancient herbal remedy. Nor was it a grim state-mandated concoction from a shadowy government lab. The truth is much more ordinary, which somehow makes it more unsettling. It was born in a respectable-looking brick building in the Adlerhaus district of Berlin, the home of the T.M. Miller Company, T.M. Miller Work, a perfectly legitimate, even prestigious, pharmaceutical firm. You imagine the laboratories inside, all white tiles and gleaming chrome fixtures, smelling of antiseptic and ambition. And in one of those labs, a man named Dr. Fritz Hauschild, the company's chief chemist, was chasing an idea. He had been fascinated by a drug HED seen used by American athletes during the 1936 Olympic Games, held right here in Berlin. An inhaler called benzedrine. It seemed to give them an edge. A burst of energy and focus. Hauschild, a man of his time, believed German science could do better. He wasn't trying to create a weapon. He was trying to create a market success. A pill that would put T.M. Miller on the map. After months of work, in late 1937, he and his team finally synthesized their own, more potent version. The chemical compound they created was methamphetamine, a word that means nothing to you or anyone else on the street. To the public, it was Pervitin, and it was a miracle. You've tried it once, just to see. A friend gave you a single tablet before a long night of studying. The effect was like coffee, which makes you feel jittery and agitated, like your nerves are buzzing just beneath your skin. No, this was different. It was a clean, cool, crystalline clarity. The fatigue didn't just disappear. It felt like a foolish, distant memory. Your thoughts became sharp, orderly things, lining up neatly in your mind. You felt capable. You felt enhanced, a better version of yourself. This was the genius of TMLO's marketing. They didn't sell it as a powerful drug. They sold it as a lifestyle tool. It was the people's pill, a Volksstrode. The company aggressively pushed it to every corner of society. Secretaries, actors, writers, train drivers, even new mothers struggling with sleepless nights. They patented it. And by 1938, it was a sensation, available without a prescription in any pharmacy. That box of pralinis you saw advertised wasn't a joke. It was a real product, Hildebrand chocolates, each one packed with nearly twice the dose of a standard Pervitin pill. Imagine that. Offering a guest in your home a piece of chocolate that would not only satisfy their sweet tooth but also give them the boundless energy to go home and vigorously clean their entire apartment. It's absurd. But did they know? Did the sharp minds at T.M. Miller, in their clean white lab coats, understand the dark side of what they had bottled? Scholars still argue about this. Did they grasp the profound addictive potential of methamphetamine? Or were they blinded by the promise of commercial success and genuine, if misguided, belief in their product? Some evidence suggests they knew it wasn't entirely harmless, but they may have massively underestimated the long-term consequences, or simply chose to ignore them in the face of skyrocketing profits. They saw a nation obsessed with efficiency and gave it the fuel it craved. No questions asked. The company's own documents from the time frame it as a harmless stimulant, a way to unlock human potential. Whether this was cynical marketing or genuine naivety is a question lost to the ambiguity of the past. For now, the pill is a symbol of modernity. It's woven into the very fabric of daily life. You see the empty boxes and rubbish bins on the street. You hear people talking about it as casually as they talk about the weather. This little tablet is helping to build the new Autobahn, to write the great novels, to design the imposing new architecture. It's the unofficial fuel of the nation's grand ambitions. But as you lie in bed, the quiet of your room is punctuated by a distant sound, the rhythmic, steady tread of marching boots from a nearby barracks, a sound that has become the city's new heartbeat, and it occurs to you that while civilians are using Pervitin to get ahead at the office, there are other men, with far more serious jobs, who are also looking for an edge. The very qualities the pill provides, substance, confidence, aggression, are useful for more than just studying. They are very, very useful for a soldier. The idea of Pervitin as more than just a civilian pick-me-up isn't just a thought drifting through your mind. In another part of Berlin, a man in a crisp grey uniform is having the exact same idea, but with a terrifying clarity of purpose. His name is Drive, Otto Rank, a man you'll never meet, but whose work is about to change the course of your life. He's not a chemist in a corporate lab. He's a doctor and the director of the Institute for General and Defense Physiology at the Military Medical Academy in Berlin. His job isn't to make people feel good. It's to figure out how to make soldiers function like machines. You can picture him in his office. It's not a place of comfort. It's functional, severe, with medical charts on the walls and textbooks on human endurance lining the shelves. Rank is a man obsessed with a single problem: fatigue. In his view, fatigue is the enemy of modern warfare. It makes soldiers slow, careless, and weak. It causes them to hesitate, to make mistakes. In the new kind of war he and his colleagues are envisioning, a war of speed, of lightning-fast strikes deep into enemy territory, there is no room for sleep. A soldier who needs 8 hours of rest is a liability. An army that can fight for 3 days straight without stopping, that is an army that can conquer a continent. Rank gets his hands on some Pervitin, this trendy little pill everyone is talking about. He reads the marketing materials from TEMML, the claims of banished fatigue and heightened focus. But HES a scientist. He doesn't trust advertisements. He trusts data, and the most readily available test subject is himself. So, in a quiet act that will have thunderous consequences, he begins a series of self-experiments. He takes a pill and records the effects with cold, clinical detachment. He notes the surge of energy, the way his mind sharpens. He stays up all night, working, writing, feeling utterly clear-headed and powerful. He feels, as he later writes in his reports, enormous drive and a sense of enlarged capacity. He has found his solution. But one man's experience isn't enough. He needs more data. So he ropes in a group of young medical officers and students to be his guinea pigs. He gives them Pervitin and puts them through a battery of tests. He makes them solve complex mathematical problems. He measures their reaction times. He makes them march on treadmills until they nearly collapse. The results are astonishing. With Pervitin, the young men can go for incredible lengths of time without rest. Their moods are elevated. Their confidence soars. And their willingness to take risks increases dramatically. They feel invincible. Rank is ecstatic. He believes he has found the key to overcoming the natural, biological limits of a soldier. There's a strange little detail in his research notes, something that would be almost comical if it weren't so chilling. To measure the effects on their decision-making and morale, he gives the drugged subjects a simple task. He asks them to sing. He notes that on Pervitin, the men sing with more enthusiasm, more gusto. It's a bizarre metric for military readiness, judging a soldier's fighting capacity by the hardness of their singing voice. But to Rank, it's all part of the same picture. The pill doesn't just keep you awake. It makes you happy to be awake. It replaces fear with euphoria. Now, did Rank and his military colleagues understand the full picture? Did they see the addiction, the psychosis, the devastating crashes that would follow these euphoric highs? This is another point where historians diverge. Some argue that, in the rush to gain a military edge, they willfully ignored the long-term dangers, viewing soldiers as expendable components in a war machine. Others suggest that the science of addiction was still in its infancy, and they may have genuinely believed the side effects were manageable, a small price to pay for battlefield superiority. They classified the negative outcomes as unpleasantness or hangover, not as symptoms of a dangerous dependency. Ranke's glowing reports start making their way up the chain of command of the Wehrmacht, the German armed forces. His conclusions are stark and persuasive. He argues that Pervitin is a strategic weapon of unparalleled importance. He advocates for its widespread, official distribution to troops, an army fueled by methamphetamine. He writes, "We'll be able to execute the lightning war, the Blitzkrieg, that the generals are dreaming of. They will be able to drive their tanks and march their infantry for days on end, moving faster and further than any enemy could possibly anticipate. The pill is no longer about helping a housewife clean her home. It's about helping a stormtrooper kick down a door. The little white tablet created for profit by the TMML company is about to be militarized. And you, blissfully unaware, sleeping in your bed in Berlin, are about to become one of Jive, Wankster's subject, on a scale he could have only dreamed of." The crisp snap of the letterbox shutting echoes in the quiet of your apartment hallway. It's a sound you've heard 1,000 times, usually signaling nothing more than a gas bill or a postcard from a relative. But this morning, the sound has a different weight. There's a thick, cream-colored envelope on the doormat. It's an Ingram formal. Your name and address are typed with perfect, rigid precision. In the corner, there's an eagle, wings spread wide, clutching a swastika. Your heart is a slow, heavy drum roll against your ribs. You know what this is. You pick it up. The paper feels coarse and important in your hands. This isn't a request. It's a command. You are to report for military induction in 2 weeks. All your plans, your thesis, your job, that trip to the mountains you were hoping to take, they all dissolve into a faint, hazy mist. Your life, which you thought was your own, has just been requisitioned. You are now property of the state. A cog to be fitted into the great, grinding machine of the Wehrmacht. The next 2 weeks are a blur of surreal bureaucracy and hollow goodbyes. You go to a medical examination where a bored-looking doctor, who seems to see hundreds of men just like you every day, listens to your chest, stamps a form, and pronounces you fit for service. "Gessen," he mutters, not even making eye contact. "Healthy." It feels like HES grading a piece of meat. You pack a small suitcase with a few personal items you'll eat aloud, a photograph of your family, a book you'll probably never have time to read, a spare pair of socks. Saying goodbye to your parents is the hardest part. Your mother presses a small bag of cookies into your hand, her eyes glistening. Your father claps you on the shoulder, his grip a little too tight, and tells you to be a good soldier and make them proud. They are trying to be brave, but you can see the fear behind their stiff smiles. Then comes the day. You find yourself standing on a cold, grey train platform with hundreds of other young men. You are all a jumble of anxieties and nervous chatter, semi-boastful, full of bravado about the adventures to come. Others are quiet, their faces pale, staring down at their scuffed shoes. You are all wearing your civilian clothes, a motley collection of worn suits, work trousers, and student jackets. It's the last time you will look like individuals. In a few hours, you will all be the same. The journey is long and tedious. The train clatters through the German countryside, past peaceful-looking farms and sleepy villages that seem to belong to a different world. No one really knows where you are going. The non-commissioned officer, the NCO, in charge of your carriage, is a gruff, stocky man with a face like a clenched fist. He barks orders and insults. His voice a constant, grating noise. This is your new reality. You finally arrive at a sprawling training camp. It's a world of mud, pine trees, and identical wooden barracks laid out in unforgiving straight lines. The first thing they do is take your clothes, your suitcase, your last connections to your old life. In exchange, you are given a pile of stiff, grey-green wool. The uniform. It smells of mothballs and something else, a faint, metallic scent of conformity. The boots are heavy and unforgiving, and you know they will raise blisters on your feet. You are no longer a student or a clerk. You are a number. The training is brutal and designed to break you down. You are woken before dawn by screaming whistles. You run for miles, your lungs burning in the cold morning air. You crawl through mud under barbed wire while instructors fire live ammunition over your head. You learn to disassemble and clean a rifle until you can do it in the dark. Your name is gone, replaced by your rank and last name, shouted at you 100 times a day. The purpose of all this, you realize, is to erase your individuality, to turn you from a you into an us. One of the strangest parts of this new life is the food. It's blonde, starchy, and served in dented metal trays. But there's a particular kind of bread they give you, a dense, dark rye bread called KO and misbrought. It's rumored to have sawdust mixed in to make it more filling. Whether that's true or just a cynical joke among the recruits is something no one really knows for sure. It's one of those little myths that get passed around. But what academic historians will later debate is the psychological impact of this process. Was this brutal training method truly effective at creating superior soldiers, as the German command believed, or did it simply create men who were obedient out of fear, their capacity for independent thought and moral reasoning systematically stripped away? The answer probably lies somewhere in the middle. Days blur into weeks. Your body hardens. Your hands become callous. The soft civilian you were is being buried under layers of muscle and discipline. You learn to live with constant fatigue, a dull ache that settles deep in your bones. You are being forged into a weapon. And soon, very soon, the men who run this vast machine will decide it's time to add the final component. The little bit of chemical help that will make you not just a good weapon, but a perfect one. The fatigue is a constant companion, a heavy cloak you can never take off. It's in the gravelly feeling behind your eyes when the whistle shrieks before dawn. It's in the leaden weight of your legs as you march across the muddy parade ground. Your muscles ache. But it's the mental exhaustion that truly grinds you down. The endless repetition. The constant shouting. The sheer lack of a single moment of quiet reflection. You begin to feel like a ghost operating a machine that happens to be your own body. Then one afternoon, during a grueling field exercise, something new is introduced. You've been marching for hours under a relentless sun, your wool uniform scratching at your sweat-soaked skin. Your platoon is called to a halt. Your sergeant, a man named Weber who usually communicates only in growls and sarcastic insults, gathers you around. His tone is different today. It's almost friendly, HES holding a small tin box. "All right, listen up, you lazy dogs," he begins, but there's no real venom in it. The top brass have sent us a little something, a special treat. They're calling it tanked chocolate. He opens the tin. Inside, nestled in wax paper, are small, square pieces of dark chocolate. He walks around and hands one to each of you. It's a bizarre moment. An act of kindness from Sergeant Weber is as rare and startling as a flower blooming on the rifle range. You look at the piece of chocolate in your palm. It looks normal enough. You're skeptical. In the army, nothing is ever a gift. There's always a catch. But you're also hungry and exhausted, and the thought of anything sweet is overwhelmingly tempting. Your friend, a boy named Klaus from Hamburg, nods you. "What do you think is in it?" he whispers. "Poison." You manage a weak smile. Probably, you whisper back. Sergeant Weber grins, a rare and unsettling sight. Go on. Eat up. It'll put a spring in your step. He calls it Panzer Schokolade. A cute name. Like something a child would invent. There are other names for it, too, whispered among the men. Pilot's salt. Gurine pills. But the one that seems most fitting is the one you hear from a cynical veteran in another platoon. Stuka tablets. Named after the screaming dive bombers. Because they send you rocketing up and then bring you crashing down. You pop the chocolate into your mouth. It's rich and slightly bitter. For a few minutes, nothing happens. Then, a slow, warm wave begins to spread through you. It starts in your stomach and radiates outwards, up your spine, into your limbs. The heavy cloak of fatigue doesn't just lift. It evaporates. The dumb ache in your muscles is gone. The world, which a moment ago was a blurry, grey haze of exhaustion, suddenly snaps into sharp, brilliant focus. The green of the trees seems greener. The blue of the sky, bluer. Your mind, which was a fog of I can't do this anymore, is now a palace of crystal clarity. You feel fantastic. Better than fantastic. You feel powerful. You look around at your comrades. Their faces, once slack with weariness, are now alert, animated. Their eyes are wide, bright. Carl stands to you. A huge, goofy grin on his face. I feel like I could march all the way to Paris right now, he says, his voice buzzing with a strange energy. This is how it begins. Not with a doctor's prescription or a formal order. It begins with a friendly, deceptive nickname and a piece of chocolate. It's a brilliant piece of psychological manipulation. If they had handed you a pill and said, "This is a powerful amphetamine to increase your combat effectiveness," you might have been wary. But tank chocolate, that's just a treat from your superiors. A little morale booster. It's framed as a gift, not a drug. Historians will later marvel at this. Was this folksy, casual distribution a deliberate strategy from the highest levels of command to ensure rapid, unthinking adoption? Or was it an organic development, with nicknames and rituals bubbling up from the ranks themselves? The truth, as is so often the case, is likely a mix of both. A top-down decision, masked by a bottom-up culture of acceptance. The rest of the day's exercise is a blur of effortless activity. You march faster. You climb obstacles with ease. You perform your drills with a fierce, joyful precision. When Sergeant Weber barks in order, you don't just obey. You obey with a thrilling, euphoric enthusiasm. You are the perfect soldier. You feel no fear, no doubt, only a boundless sense of capability. For the first time since you put on this uniform, you feel like you are not just a cog in the machine, but the engine itself. And as the sun sets, you are not tired. You are not tired at all. You feel like you could stay awake forever. The air crackles with a tension that is no longer just the background hum of a nation preparing for war. It's the sharp, metallic smell of ozone before a lightning strike. It is September 1st. Yaojiu Sanjiu. The whispers and rumors that have been swirling through the barracks for weeks have solidified into a hard, cold reality. Poland. The word is spoken in hushed, excited tones. For you, standing in the pre-dawn chill, lined up with your battalion on a dusty field just across the border. The word means one thing. The training is over. Your NCOS move down the line. They aren't handing out chocolate this time. They are carrying the same small tins you saw before, but now the pretense is gone. They are handing out the small, white Pervitin tablets themselves. The order is simple. Take one, put another in your breast pocket for later. There is no talk of tank chocolate. It is now called a Wekdamin. A Wekamin. The name is clinical, direct. The casual introduction is over. This is now standard operating procedure. You swallow the pill with a mouthful of cold, metallic tasting water from your canteen. You feel the familiar, bitter chalkiness on your tongue as you wait for it to take effect. You look at the faces of the men around you. You see your own mixture of fear and anticipation reflected in their eyes. Many of them are just boys, their cheeks still smooth, their hands gripping their new rifles with a white-knuckled intensity. This is the moment everything has been building towards. The years of propaganda, the months of brutal training, the subtle chemical conditioning, it all comes down to this. Then it begins. A low rumble in the distance grows into a deafening roar. Above you, the sky darkens as scores of Stuka dive bombers scream towards the east. The ground begins to shake as the Panzer divisions, the armored spearhead of the attack, lurch forward, their treads churning the earth. The artillery opens up, a continuous, deafening thunder that feels like the world is being torn apart. And in the midst of this terrifying symphony of destruction, your orders come. Forward. As you begin to march, the pill kicks in. The fear that was not in your stomach just moments ago doesn't vanish entirely, but it recedes. It becomes a small, distant thing, easily ignored. In its place, a cold, exhilarating focus takes over. Your senses are on fire. You feel the rough texture of your rifle stock in your hands. You smell the cordite in the air. You see every detail of the landscape ahead with an unnatural clarity. Your body feels light, powerful, a perfectly oiled machine. You are no longer a frightened boy from Berlin. You are a soldier. You are part of the Blitzkrieg. You march for hours, which turn into a day. And then into the night. You don't stop. You cross the border and push deep into Polish territory. The resistance you encounter is sporadic, fierce but disorganized. You move too fast for them. The Polish army was prepared for the kind of war that was fought 20 years ago, a war of trenches and slow advances. They are not prepared for this. They are not prepared for an army that doesn't seem to need to sleep. There's a strange, surreal detail that sticks in your memory from those first days. You notice that the horses, used by the army for supply wagons, are struggling. Their heads are hanging low, their flanks heaving with exhaustion. They're operating on the normal rules of biology. You and your comrades are not. You march past these exhausted animals, your own legs pumping like pistons, and there's a buzz, a sense of superiority. You have transcended the needs of the flesh. A quirky fact that military logisticians later noted was the immense strain this new kind of warfare put on traditional supply lines, especially those still reliant on animal power. The men could outpace their own food and ammunition. Historians will later call the Polish campaign a test run for Pervitin. They will debate its true impact. Was the swift victory primarily due to superior strategy, overwhelming force, and the enemy's unpreparedness? Or did the methamphetamine-fueled sweepslands of the German soldiers provide the critical edge that made the Blitzkrieg so devastatingly effective? The consensus is that the drug was not the sole reason for the victory, but it was a powerful enabler. It allowed the German High Command's audacious, high-speed plans to be executed with a relentless ferocity that would have been impossible for a naturally tired army. It turned a strategic theory into a terrifying reality. For you, in the modern chaos of Poland, there are no academic debates. There is only the endless forward motion. You catch glimpses of your reflection in a puddle of water and barely recognize the face staring back. The eyes are wide, the pupils dilated, the manic energy burning in them. You are part of a grey-green tide, flowing inexorably eastward, fueled by chemistry and a sense of absolute invincibility. You are winning, and it feels incredible. The concept of a day loses its meaning. There is no longer a cycle of morning, afternoon, and night. There is only now, a continuous, unending present moment of marching, fighting, and moving forward. Time becomes a thick, syrupy substance that you just push through. The sun rises, glares down, and sets. The moon appears, a pale, indifferent disk in the sky, and then it, too, disappears. And you are still awake. You are still moving. You are on your second day without sleep, and then it bleeds into a third. Your body should be screaming for rest. Your mind should be a foggy mess of confusion. But you feel a strange, detached clarity. Your platoon takes a brief halt in a captured village. The houses are shattered, some still smoldering. You sit on a low stone wall, your rifle across your lap, and you watch your comrades. Their movements are jerky, a little too fast. Their conversations are loud, fragmented, punctuated by sudden, sharp laughter that sounds more like a release of tension than genuine amusement. Your friend Klaus is talking, his words tumbling out of his mouth in a breathless rush. He's describing a skirmish from the day before, but the story makes no sense. It loops back on itself, filled with irrelevant details and sudden shifts in topic. He's not really talking to you, he's just talking. His eyes have a hard, glassy sheen to them, and he keeps rubbing his nose, a nervous, repetitive tick you've never seen before. You realize you're doing something similar, constantly clenching and unclenching your jaw. Your teeth ache from the grinding. This is the state of perfect wakefulness that Dr. Rank had celebrated in his labs. But out here, in the real world, it feels different. It feels brutal. You are hyper-aware, but only of the surface of things. You can see the intricate pattern of veins on a leaf, but you can't process the bigger picture. You feel a growing sense of detachment, as if you are watching a film of yourself rather than truly experiencing events. You are efficient. Yes, you follow orders instantly. You can load your rifle in seconds. Your movements economical and precise. But the human element, the part of you that feels fear, or pity, or even simple boredom, is being hollowed out. There's a strange phenomenon you start to notice among the men. A bizarre side effect of the sleep deprivation and the drug. You'll be marching in the dead of night, and the man in front of you will suddenly stop and start talking to a tree, convinced it's an enemy soldier. Another time, you watch a corporal spend 10 minutes meticulously arranging a pile of pebbles into a perfect, geometric shape for no reason at all. These are minor psychotic breaks, little tears in the fabric of reality. At the time, they are dismissed as battle fatigue or the stress of combat. A strange little fact that almost no one understood then was that these weren't just signs of exhaustion. They were classic symptoms of amphetamine-induced psychosis. Did the commanders know this was happening? Did Sergeant Weber, watching his men behave with twitchy, manic energy, understand the price of this sleep swings? It's a subject of debate. Some historical accounts suggest that NCOS and officers on the ground were concerned. They saw the wild eyes, the nonsensical chatter, the moments of paranoia. They saw the physical toll, but their orders were to keep pushing forward. And Pervitin was the tool they were given to achieve that. Any misgivings were secondary to the primary goal of relentless advance. They were cogs in the machine, just like you, and their job was to keep the other cogs turning. On the morning of the third day, you are ordered to take a crossroads defended by a small contingent of Polish soldiers. You move into position, your heart hammering not with fear, but with a kind of aggressive, predatory excitement. The world has simplified itself into a set of clear, simple objectives. Take that house, secure that road, eliminate that threat. There is no room for moral ambiguity. The drug has burned it away, leaving only the cold logic of the mission. The firefight is short and brutal. You move with a speed and aggression that feels inhuman. You are not thinking. You are just reacting. Your body a finely tuned weapon system. When it's over, and you stand among the silent aftermath, you don't feel triumph, or remorse, or anything at all. You just feel a deep, vibrating hum of energy in your bones. You have done your job. You have not slept for nearly 72 hours. You have pushed your body and mind far beyond their natural limits. You feel like a god. A new kind of man built for a new kind of war. You are the living embodiment of the Blitzkrieg. And you have no idea that the bill for this incredible, terrible power is about to come due. The Polish campaign is over. It was shockingly, terrifyingly fast. You are sent back to a garrison in Germany, and for a few weeks, The world returns to something resembling normal, but it's an uncanny valley of normalcy. The frantic energy of the invasion is gone, replaced by a strange, hollow quiet. The army's resetting, disarming, and learning from its first bloody experiment. And the lesson that the High Command seems to have learned is that Pervitin works. It works spectacularly. The whispers start again. But this time they are not about Poland. They are about France. The big one. The real enemy. The memory of the Great War hangs heavy in the air. The French have the Maginot Line, a chain of fortresses everyone says is impenetrable. The thought of attacking it head-on is horrifying. It brings to mind images of your father's generation, drowning in mud, fighting for years over a few hundred yards of shattered earth. But the generals, you hear, have a different idea. They plan so audacious, so risky, that it relies entirely on one thing: speed. This is where the logistics become truly mind-boggling. The casual, almost experimental distribution of Pervitin in Poland is replaced by a massive, systematic industrial effort. You start to see the evidence of it yourself. It's no longer just a tin box carried by your sergeant. It's now part of your standard issue, as essential as your ammunition or your field dressing. The little white pills are given a formal military designation and a stock number. They are now an official weapon of war. You can imagine the telex machines in Berlin, clattering away, sending orders to the TEMML factory. The message is clear: ramp up production. The Wehrmacht needs millions of tablets. And TEMML, a private company enjoying a tidal wave of government cash, is happy to oblige. Between the spring and summer of 1940, over 35 million tablets of Pervit, in unrelated methamphetamine-based drug, are shipped to the German Army and Air Force. 35 million. It's a number so large it's difficult to comprehend. Enough to keep an army of millions marching, driving, and flying without rest for the critical first phase of the invasion. One of the more peculiar details of this massive logistical undertaking was the creation of the so-called Flieger, Schokolade or aviator's chocolate. This was a new and improved version of the Pervitin laced chocolates, but this time specifically formulated for the Luftwaffe. It contained not just methamphetamine, but also finely ground coffee. It was a high-octane candy bar designed to give pilots the dual kick of caffeine and amphetamine, keeping them alert during long bombing runs over France and Britain. Imagine being a pilot. Your pre-flight check consisting of testing your flaps, checking your fuel, and eating a special bar of super chocolate. Back in your barracks, the drug becomes part of the routine. The pills are often referred to as Stimmungskanone, or mood cannons. It's a darkly humorous nickname. The men now understand the cycle. You take the pill, you feel the euphoric rush, the sense of power and clarity. You perform incredible feats of endurance. But then, you crash. The mood cannon fires you into the sky. And then you plummet back to earth. But the prospect of the crash seems a small price to pay for the feeling of invincibility. The debate among military strategists, even to this day, is how central this chemical logistics operation was to the plan for France. The famous Manstein plan called for a massive armored thrust through the dense, hilly Ardennes forest, a region the French considered impassable for tanks. The success of this plan depended entirely on the German columns moving non-stop, day and night, for several days, to outflank the main Allied armies. Was this plan conceived because they had Pervitin, or was Pervitin simply the tool that allowed them to execute an already brilliant, if risky, strategy? It's a chicken and egg question. Most historians believe the strategy came first, but that the confidence to attempt it was massively bolstered by the knowledge that their soldiers could be chemically pushed beyond all normal human limits. You don't know the grand strategy, you just know what you see. You see the trucks arriving, loaded with crates. You see the new confidence, the swagger, in the officers. There is a sense of coiled, potential energy building throughout the entire army. This is going to be different from Poland. This is going to be the main event. You are given your new orders. Your division is being moved west, towards the Ardennes, You clean your rifle. You part your gear. And you make sure you have your small, state-issued tin of mood cannons. The army has been fed. The army has been trained. And now, the army has been drugged. It's ready. While the generals and logisticians are stockpiling pills as if they were bullets, not everyone in a position of power is so enthusiastic. In a quiet, stately office in Berlin, far from the mud at the training grounds, a man is growing increasingly alarmed. His name is Leonardo Conti. As the Reich health leader and a high-ranking official, he is, ironically, the top doctor in a nation that is about to send its army to war on a massive dose of methamphetamine. You wouldn't know his name to the average soldier. The workings of the public health ministry are as remote and irrelevant as the movements of the stars. But Conti's struggle is a critical, hidden part of this story. He is a man caught in a contradiction. His job is to protect the health of the German people. And he is a fervent believer in the national project. He promotes wholesome living, exercise, and abstaining from tobacco and alcohol. His department produces posters about the importance of fresh air and a balanced diet. And yet, the most powerful institution in the country, the Wehrmacht, is actively planning to poison its own soldiers. Conti starts to receive disturbing reports. They come from civilian doctors who are seeing patients, the secretaries, the students, the factory workers, who began taking Pervitin as a simple pick-me-up and are now showing all the signs of addiction. They are anxious, paranoid, and suffering from heart palpitations. They can't sleep without the drug, and they can't function with it. He sees reports of Pervitin-related breakdowns, of people being admitted to psychiatric wards. He begins to understand that this is not a harmless stimulant. It's a dangerous, addictive substance that is weaving its way into the fabric of German society. He tries to raise the alarm. He writes memos, reports, and letters to other government ministries, including the military. He points out the long-term risks: addiction, heart failure, psychosis. He argues that a soldier who becomes dependent on Pervitin is not a reliable asset, but a liability. He argues for the drug to be strictly controlled, to be available only by prescription. He is, in essence, a public health official doing his job. But he is swimming against a very powerful tide. On one side, he has the TMML company, which is making a fortune and has a vested interest in keeping Pervitin as widely available as possible. On the other, more formidable side, he has the Wehrmacht High Command. The generals, along with doctors, rank and his team, see Pervitin not as a public health issue, but as a military necessity. Conti's warnings about long-term health risks sound weak and irrelevant when compared to the promise of a swift victory against France. What does one soldier's potential heart problem in 5 years matter, when the fate of the nation is to be decided in the next 5 weeks? There's a particularly absurd and telling detail from this period. Conti's health ministry was running a massive anti-smoking campaign, one of the most advanced in the world at the time. They correctly identified the links between smoking and cancer and produced sophisticated propaganda to discourage tobacco use. So you have this bizarre situation where the state is telling you with one hand that smoking a cigarette is a danger to your health and the nation's future, while with the other hand, it's giving you a vial of methamphetamine and telling you it's good for you. It's a level of cognitive dissonance that is hard to fathom. The debate over Conti's true motivations and effectiveness continues among those who study the era. Was he a lone voice of reason, a genuine public health advocate fighting a losing battle against military expediency? Or was his opposition more about bureaucratic turf wars, about his ministry wanting control over a substance that the military had co-opted? Was he concerned for the individual soldier, or for the abstract concept of national health? The evidence suggests his concerns were genuine, but he was ultimately a pragmatist. He knew he couldn't win a direct fight with the military, so he achieves a partial, almost meaningless victory. In July 1941, long after the invasion of France is over, Pervitin is finally placed on the list of restricted substances under the Opium Law. It officially requires a prescription. But Conti's victory is hollow. The new regulation contains a specific exemption for the Wehrmacht. The military can still order and distribute as much of the drug as it wants, with no oversight from Conti's ministry. He has, in effect, managed to lock the stable door after the horse has not only bolted, but has already trampled a path across half of Europe. For you, waiting near the Ardennes, none of this matters. You are unaware of the bureaucratic battles being fought in Berlin. You only know that the pills are still being handed out, that the mood is still one of aggressive confidence. The warnings of the Reich health leader are just whispers in an office, drowned out by the roar of tank engines. The health of the nation has been redefined. It no longer means the well-being of its people. It means the success of its army. The order comes in the dead of night on May 10th. Yao Zhou Siling. It's not a dramatic speech or a trumpet call. It's a low, urgent murmur that passes down the line, from officer to NCO to soldier. It's time. You swallow your pill. The familiar bitter taste is now the taste of impending action. Outside your transport truck, you can hear the deep, guttural growl of hundreds of tank engines firing up, a sound that vibrates through the ground and into your bones. This is it, the great gamble. You are part of an immense column of steel and men, stretching for over 100 miles. Your destination is the Ardennes, a region of rolling hills, dense forests, and winding roads in Belgium and Luxembourg. The Allied commanders, the French, the British, the Belgians, are convinced this area is a natural fortress. They believe the woods are too thick, the roads too narrow, for a major armed assault. Their best forces are waiting further north, in the flat plains of Belgium, expecting the German attack to come there. Just as it did in the last war, they are staring in the wrong direction. As your column lurches forward and crosses the border, you begin to understand the sheer insanity of the plan. The roads are barely wide enough for a single tank, let alone thousands of them, along with trucks, artillery pieces, and 500,000 soldiers. It is a traffic jam of historic proportions, but this traffic jam moves. It never stopped. The Pervitin is working its magic. The drivers of the tanks and trucks, their eyes wide and staring, grip their steering wheels and push onward through the night. When a vehicle breaks down or runs out of fuel, it is ruthlessly shoved off the road into a ditch. There is no time for repairs. The column must not stop. As an infantryman, you are either riding on the back of a tank, clinging on for dear life, or marching at a grueling pace alongside the armor. Sleep is not an option. It's not even a memory. Your division, the 7th Panzer, is commanded by a general named Erwin Rommel. You only catch glimpses of him. A weary, energetic man who seems to be everywhere at once, personally directing traffic at a congested crossroads or urging a stalled tank crew forward. He is leading from the very front. A whirlwind of motion. His division moves so fast, it often loses contact with the rest of the German army. It outruns its own command structure, its own supply lines. At one point, they advance so deep and so quickly into enemy territory that even the German High Command loses track of them. For a few days, they simply vanish from the map. They become known as the GS Spencer Division, the Ghost Division. You are one of those ghosts. You push through the forest, a sleepless phantom in a grey-green uniform. The experience is hallucinatory. The endless drawl of the engines, the lack of sleep, the chemical fire in your veins. It all conspires to warp your perception. The trees at the side of the road seem to lean in, their branches like skeletal arms. Shadows flicker and dance in your peripheral vision. You have conversations with your comrades that you can't remember 2 minutes later. One of the strangest small details of this historic breakthrough is what the soldiers did during the brief. Infrequent halts. They weren't trying to sleep. They were too wired for that. Instead, you'd see men compulsively cleaning their rifles, which were already spotless, or you'd see them writing frantic, high-energy letters home. The words scribbled across the page in a manic rush. It was a condition of force, pointless activity. the body and mind demanding an outlet for the drug's ferocious energy. This insane, non-stop push through the Ardennes is one of the most debated military operations in history. Was its success a result of Rommel's brilliant and daring leadership? Was it the failure of Allied intelligence to anticipate the move? Or was it fundamentally a triumph of pharmacology? The historical consensus is that it was a combination of all three. The plan was audacious. The Allies were complacent. But it was the methamphetamine that provided the physical means to make the impossible possible. It allowed the German soldiers to suspend the laws of biology for 3 critical days. An army running on normal human endurance would have become bogged down in that forest. An army running on Pervitin became a ghost division. On the 3rd day, you burst out of the forest and into the open country of France. You have done it. You have bypassed the Maginot Line. You are in the enemy's rear. The Allied commanders are stunned. They cannot believe that an entire army has just appeared where no army should be. It is a moment of supreme, intoxicating triumph. You look at the wide open fields in front of you. The road to the English Channel clear. You and your sleepless, ghost-like comrades have broken the back of the French army. You feel invincible, immortal. The crash can't be far away. But right now, in this moment of victory, it doesn't seem to matter at all. The high is glorious, crystalline, and absolute. The victory feels preordained, a physical manifestation of your own inner sense of power. But chemistry is a strict bookkeeper. It makes no exceptions. For every euphoric high, there is an equal and opposite low. For 3 days of godlike energy, you must now pay a steep price. The crash, when it comes, is not a gentle descent. It is a fall from a great height onto hard stone. The order finally comes to halt and regroup. After bursting out of the Ardennes and racing across France, the armored spearheads need to consolidate, to let the slower infantry catch up, to refuel. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, the engines fall silent, the shouting stops. The relentless forward momentum ceases, and in that sudden, profound quiet, the drug begins to wear off. It starts with a tremor in your hands, a fine, uncontrollable shaking. Then a wave of cold washes over you, a deep, cellular cold that has nothing to do with the outside temperature. You huddle in your greatcoat, but you can't get warm. A dull, pounding headache begins behind your eyes, a blacksmith's hammer keeping a slow, brutal rhythm. The brilliant, high-definition world of a few hours ago bleeds into a muddy, grey smear. Every sound is too loud. Every light is too bright. The friendly chatter of your comrades is an unbearable, grating noise. Then comes the exhaustion. It is a physical presence, an immense weight that presses down on you, crushing you into the earth. It is more than just tiredness. It is a complete and utter depletion of every energy reserve in your body and soul. Your limbs feel like they are filled with wets, and lifting your canteen to your lips is a monumental effort. You collapse onto the ground, not even bothering to unroll your blanket, and fall into a thick, dreamless, and profoundly unsatisfying sleep. You sleep for 18 hours straight, but when you wake up, you don't feel rested. You feel hollowed out. Your joints ache. Your mind is a sluggish, swampy mess. You feel a deep, gnawing depression, a sense of profound and inexplicable sadness. They call it the Katzenjammer, the cat's wail, the hangover, but it feels more like a kind of spiritual death. You see the same look on the faces of everyone around you. The invincible supermen of the Ghost Division have become a shuffling, hollow-eyed group of zombies. A truly bizarre side effect of this mass come down was something the medics started calling Pervitin paranoia. During the high, the drug made you aggressive and confident. During the crash, this curdled into suspicion and fear. You'd see men staring intently at their own comrades, convinced they were spies. Fights would break out over a stolen cigarette or perceived insult. The strong bonds of camaraderie forged in battle would fray and snap under the strain of 1,000 simultaneous neurechemical collapses. This is the part of the story that the triumphant newsreels back home will never show. This is the hidden cost of the Blitzkrieg. Historians still debate the extent to which the German High Command understood and planned for this. Did they factor in this period of mass incapacitation? Some evidence suggests they did, at least partially. The famous halt order at Dunkirk, where the German panzers stopped just short of destroying the trapped British army, has been a source of endless historical speculation, while there were complex strategic reasons for the order. Some historians argue that a contributing factor was simply that the German armored divisions, particularly the soldiers and their commanders, were completely and utterly spent. They had reached the absolute limit of their Pervitin-fueled endurance and were physically and mentally incapable of pushing on for the final kill. You are ordered to perform basic duties, clean your rifle, maintain your vehicle, but you move as if you were underwater. Sergeant Weber, who during the advance was a terrifying whirlwind of energy, now just sits on a crate, staring into the middle distance, his face a grey, slick mouse. The mood cannons have fired, and the silence they've left behind is deafening. You feel weak, vulnerable, and profoundly human again, and you have a chilling thought. What happens when we have to do this again? The only thing that seems capable of lifting this suffocating blanket of misery is another one of those little white pills. The logic is simple, seductive, and terrifying. The problem is also the solution. A dependency is being forged, not in the back alleys of a city, but on the battlefields of France, sanctioned and supplied by the state itself. In the hollowed-out aftermath of the crash, you find a moment to do something you haven't done in weeks. Write a letter home. The army encourages it. It's good for morale, they say. It connects the home front to the battlefront. Use it with a flimsy piece of field post paper and a pencil, and you try to describe the indescribable. How do you tell your mother and father what you have just been through? You can't write, "We conquered France because we were all high on methamphetamine." You can't describe the hallucinatory haze of the Ardennes, or the profound, soul-crushing exhaustion that followed. So you write the letter you are supposed to write. The fighting was hard, but our spirits are high. The French were no match for the spirit of the German soldier. I am well and thinking of you. It is a tissue of lies, a patriotic fiction. But as you read it over, you realize it's not a complete lie. Your spirits were high. You did feel invincible. The problem is that the feeling is gone now, leaving a gaping void. You are writing about a person who doesn't exist anymore. The euphoric super soldier of 3 days ago. The person holding the pencil is a trembling, depressed ghost. Millions of these letters are making their way back to Germany. They are called field posts, and they are a historical treasure trove. Unfiltered glimpse into the psyche of the German army. Historians have spent decades poring over them, and they reveal a fascinating, hidden story, while many letters, like yours, stick to the official, heroic narrative. Others tell a different tale, often between the lines. Soldiers started writing home with strange requests. "Dear Mother, when you send the next package, could you include some more of that Pervitin from the pharmacy? It's wonderful for when you have to be on guard duty, and it helps with the headaches." Or, "Dearest Anja, I hope you are well. See if you can get your hands on some Pervitin. We can get it here, but it's always good to have extra. It makes the long marches so much easier." These letters show how normalized the drug had become. Soldiers saw it as no different from asking for a bar of soap or a warm pair of socks. They are asking their parents, their wives, their sweethearts, to become their dealers. And in Germany, where the pill was still widely, if not legally, available, families would dutifully go to the pharmacy, buy the Pervitin, and tuck it into a care package next to the homemade cookies and the hand-knitted scarf. There's a particularly strange and sad little detail that emerges from these letters. Some soldiers would describe their emotional state with a new, jarring vocabulary. They would write about their raging nerves or uncontrollable shaking. They would describe incredible highs followed by days of darkness. A young soldier wrote to his family in Cologne, "I am writing to you on Pervitin. I can work for days without getting tired. But when it stops, I feel like I am going to die. He wasn't a doctor or a scientist. He was just a boy, trying to explain the violent chemical roller coaster he was riding. The sheer volume of these requests eventually became a concern for the authorities. But what were they to do? The debate over these letters touches on the core question of the regime's control. Did they censor these letters to hide the growing dependency from the home front? The answer is complex. Outright censorship was difficult and could damage morale. Instead, they took a different approach. The army's medical services began to issue warnings, not to the soldiers, but to their families back home. They published articles in local newspapers and magazines, politely asking families to please stop sending stimulants to the front. They framed it not as a drug problem, but as a medical one. Your soldier is under the best possible medical care, the articles would say. Please do not send unsolicited medicines. It was a gentle, bureaucratic attempt to turn off the private supply tap, without ever admitting that the official supply tap was gushing. You fold your own letter, the one full of brave lies. You hand it to the officer in charge of the mail. As it begins its long journey home, it will become one of a million pieces of a vast, complicated puzzle. A puzzle of state-sponsored addiction, of private anxieties, and of a nation collectively trying to write a story of heroic triumph, while nervously asking for another pill to help them get through the day. The army may be a machine that runs on the ground, but the war is also being fought in the sky. And up there, in the cold, lonely cockpit of a fighter or a bomber. Fatigue is not just a weakness, it's a death sentence. A moment's hesitation, a split second of slowed reaction time, and you become a smear of flame and smoke against the blue canvas. The pilots of the Luftwaffe, Germany's Air Force, know this better than anyone, and so, it's no surprise that they, too, had embraced the little white pill. You hear the stories from the Luftwaffe crews billeted near your own unit. They talk about Pervitin with a kind of casual reverence. For them, it's not for marching, it's for surviving. It's for staying awake during the mind-numbing boredom of a long-range reconnaissance flight over the Atlantic. A mission that can last for 10 or 12 hours. It's for maintaining the razor-sharp focus needed during a swirling, chaotic dogfight where enemy fighters can appear from any direction. They call it Flieger Souls, Pilot Salt, or sometimes to combine as tabletant, Stuka tablets. The nicknames are part of the culture, our way of domesticating a dangerous substance. A bomber pilot, a boy no older than you, tells you a story over a shared cigarette. He describes flying a mission over northern England, on the long flight back, with the fuel gauge nearing empty and the drone of the engines a hypnotic lullaby. He felt his eyelids growing heavy. Sleep was pulling at him, the warm, comforting blanket. But it was a fatal blanket. He knew that if he fell asleep, he and his entire crew would end up in the cold, grey waters of the North Sea. So his co-pilot, without a word, reached into a tin and handed him two Pervitin tablets. He chewed them dry. He describes the effect as a jolt of lightning. The fatigue vanished. His mind became clear and sharp, and he flew them home safely. To him, the pill wasn't a drug. It was a lifesaver. This reliance on stimulants in the air was not unique to the Germans. Allied pilots, particularly bomber crews in the later stages of the war, would be given amphetamines, often benzed dead by their own flight surgeons to endure the brutal 8-hour missions deep into Germany. This fact is often overlooked, creating a perception that this was a uniquely German phenomenon. But while the Allies used it, the German military's use was far more widespread, systematic, and integrated into their very doctrine from the very beginning of the war. For the Allies, it was a tool. For the Germans, it was a philosophy. There's a strange and almost comical detail in the Luftwaffe's official guidance for using Pervitin. The medical officers, aware of the potential for overdose and erratic behavior, issued strict instructions. The recommended dose was 1 to 2 tablets, to be taken only when absolutely necessary. But they also included a warning. Do not take Pervitin if you are about to engage in complex navigational tasks. It's a baffling piece of advice. They are giving pilots a powerful stimulant to stay awake on long flights, but then telling them not to use it when they need to figure out where they are going. It highlights the deep contradiction at the heart of the drug's use. They wanted the wake capsules, but they were terrified of the side effects, like impaired judgment and overconfidence, which could be just as deadly as falling asleep. The debate among aviation historians continues. Did the drug actually make them better pilots? Or did it just make them feel like better pilots? The evidence is ambiguous. The initial effect was certainly an increase in reaction time and focus. But long-term use, or use during the crash phase, could lead to recklessness, aggression, and a tendency to take foolish risks. A pilot on Pervitin might feel confident enough to take on 3 enemy fighters at once, a decision that a clear-headed, if tired, pilot might have avoided. How many Luftwaffe pilots were lost not because they were shot down, but because a chemical in their bloodstream told them they were invincible? We will never know. You listen to the pilot's story, and you see the same patterns you've seen in the army. The initial, enthusiastic adoption, the belief in its miraculous powers, the normalization through nicknames and rituals, and the creeping, unspoken understanding of its dark side. The Luftwaffe, with its image of chivalrous, high-tech knights of the air, was just as dependent on the crude power of chemistry as the mud-slogging infantryman. The war machine, whether it rolled on treads or flew on wings, required the same high-octane fuel to keep it running, and the supply was plentiful. France has fallen. The victory was so swift, so total, that it feels like a dream. A sense of intoxicating destiny settles over the army. You are told that the war is almost over. Only one obstacle remains. A narrow strip of water. Britain. From your new position on the coast of France, you can see it on a clear day. A faint, pale light on the horizon. The chalk cliffs of Dover. It looks so close, so vulnerable. The preparations begin for what is codenamed Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Great Britain. The mood is confident, almost arrogant. If the French army, the most powerful in Europe, collapsed in 6 weeks, what chance does a small island have? The barges and boats needed to transport the army across the channel are gathered in the French ports. The plans are drawn up. And on, of course, the Pervitin is stockpiled. The logisticians calculate the number of pills needed for the first wave of the assault. The pills that will keep the soldiers fighting on the beaches of Kent and Sussex without rest. But the days turn into weeks, and the order to invade never comes. The problem, you begin to realize, is the sky. Before the army can cross the water, the Luftwaffe must control the air. They must destroy the Royal Air Force, and the RAF is not collapsing. Every day, you watch the German bomber formations fly out, escorted by fighters, and every day, you see them limp back, their numbers thinned, with stories of the fierce, determined resistance they are meeting from the British Spitfires and Hurricanes. This is where the limits of the wonder drug start to become painfully apparent. Pervitin can keep a pilot awake, but it can't make his plane fly faster. It can give him confidence, but it can't protect him from a well-aimed cannon shell. The Battle of Britain becomes a brutal war of attrition, and the Germans are losing. The pilots are pushed to their absolute limits. They are flying multiple sorties a day, fueled by pilot salt and nervous energy, but the physical and mental toll is immense. The crash, which on the ground was a miserable but manageable experience, is a catastrophic liability in the air. A pilot suffering a Pervitin hangover is worse than a tired pilot. He's depressed, anxious, and his judgment is shot. You hear stories of pilots making basic errors, of becoming disoriented and flying in the wrong direction, of simply losing the will to fight. The drug that was supposed to guarantee victory is now contributing to a new kind of defeat, a slow grinding down of men and machines. There's a particularly niche and revealing aspect of the stalled invasion plans. The German military planners actually designed a special invasion ration pack for the soldiers who would land in Britain, along with the usual dense bread and preserved meat. Each pack was slated to contain a strip of Pervitin tablets. They even ran tests with naval commandos, loading them up with the drug and having them storm mock beaches to see how they would perform. The results were initially promising, showing high levels of aggression. But the planners also noted a worrying lack of tactical finesse. The drug soldiers would just charge forward mindlessly, ignoring cover and taking unnecessary risks. It was a trade-off. Fearless aggression in exchange for intelligent, self-preserving tactics. The academic debate here focuses on a fascinating what if. What if the Germans had managed to launch the invasion? Would the Pervitin-fueled first wave have succeeded? Many historians argue that even if they had managed to land, the story would have ended badly for the German forces. The drug could get them onto the beaches, but it couldn't solve the immense logistical problems of supplying an army across the Channel. And an army of soldiers crashing from a 3-day meth binge would have been incredibly vulnerable to a determined British counterattack. The drug gave the illusion of strength, but it was a brittle, temporary strength with a built-in point of failure. As the summer of 1940 fades into autumn, the weather in the Channel worsens. The barges in the ports are dispersed. The invasion is postponed, but everyone knows it has been cancelled. It's the first real check. The first time the Blitzkrieg has been stopped. It's a sobering moment. The sense of invincibility begins to crack. For you, standing on the French coast, looking out at the grey, angry water, Britain is no longer a vulnerable target. It is a fortress. And the channel that separates you from it feels as wide as an ocean. The wonder drug, it turns out, cannot conquer the sea. It cannot win a war on its own. It's a bitter lesson, and it signals that the easy victories are over. The postponement of the British invasion leaves the army in a state of suspended animation. The immense, powerful machine that conquered Western Europe now sits idle, a predator without prey. Rumors begin to circulate, as they always do. Whispers of a new plan, a new direction. This time, the word is not Britain, but Russia, the Soviet Union. It seems unthinkable. The two countries had signed an non-aggression pact. They had carved up Poland together. But the logic of the regime is relentless, and the whispers grow louder until they become fact. In the spring of 1941, you and your division are transferred. You are put on trains and moved across the continent. The journey is long, and with every mile you travel east, the landscape changes. The neat, manicured fields of France give way to the vast, flat, endless plains of Eastern Europe. The scale of this new operation, codenamed Barbarossa, is difficult to process. Everything is bigger. The distances, the number of men, mistakes. 3 million German soldiers are massed along a front that stretches for over 1,000 miles. This will not be a 6-week campaign. The commanders talk of a few months, a glorious summer war that will be over by winter. And to fuel this colossal undertaking, the Pervitin production has gone into overdrive. The orders sent from military headquarters to the TMML factory are for tens of millions more tablets. The drug is no longer just a tool for the initial breakthrough. It is now seen as essential for the entire campaign. On June 22nd, it begins. The assault is even more ferocious than the one launched against France. You cross the border into Soviet territory, and once again, the initial advance is stunningly successful. The Soviet armies, caught by surprise, are encircled and destroyed in a series of huge battles. You push deeper and deeper into the vastness of Russia. The villages are different here. They are collections of simple wooden huts, called izbs, surrounded by endless fields of sunflowers. The roads dissolve into dusty tracks that turn to thick, impassable mud when it rains. The pill is once again your constant companion. You take it to stay awake during the long, forced marches under the hot summer sun. You take it to give you courage during the brutal, close-quarters fighting against a determined and resilient enemy. But you start to notice a difference. In France, the drug made you feel euphoric, superior. Here, on the endless, featureless steppe, the effect is different. It makes you feel wired, paranoid. The sheer emptiness of the landscape gets into your head. The highs are still high, but they are tinged with a new kind of anxiety. The crashes are deeper, darker. A peculiar and grim detail of this phase of the war was the interaction between the drug and the army's official policy of brutality. The war in the East was explicitly designated as a war of annihilation. Soldiers were encouraged, even ordered, to act with extreme ruthlessness against political commissars and civilians. It's a deeply uncomfortable but necessary question for historians to ask. What role did Pervitin play in this? Did a drug that lowered inhibitions, increased aggression, and created a sense of emotional detachment make it easier for ordinary soldiers to commit atrocities? There is no simple answer, and it's a fiercely debated topic. The drug was not the cause of the brutality. The cause was the ideology of the regime, but it may well have been a facilitator, a chemical agent that helped men disconnect their actions from their conscience. You push on, Mint, Smolensk. The names of the captured cities are just milestones on a seemingly infinite row. The summer sun beats down, and the dust is everywhere. It gets into your food, your water, your lungs. By the autumn, you are on the outskirts of Moscow. You can, on a clear day, see the spires of the Kremlin in the distance. Victory seems imminent. The mur, just as the commanders promised, seems to be almost won. Then, one morning, you wake up and the world has changed. A single, delicate snowflake drifts down and melts on the sleeve of your uniform. Then another, and another. Within a few days, the grey, dusty landscape is covered in a pristine blanket of white. The first snows of the Russian winter have arrived, and with them, a new enemy, one that you cannot fight, you cannot outmaneuver, and you cannot defeat with a pill. The cold, the infamous General Winter has taken the field. Your summer uniform is pathetically inadequate. The oil in your vehicles and guns begins to freeze. The great German war machine, which ran on gasoline and methamphetamine, begins to grind to a halt. The real nightmare is about to begin. The cold is not just a sensation. It is an active, malevolent force. It seeps through your wool greatcoat as if it were made of paper. It finds every gap, every seam. It turns the metal of your rifle into a thing of searing pain to the touch. The temperature plummets to levels you didn't think were possible for human life to endure. -20, -30, even -40 degrees Celsius. The very air seems to crystallize in your lungs with each ragged breath. The lightning war of the summer has frozen solid. This is where the role of Pervitin undergoes a fundamental transformation. It is no longer a tool for aggression, an attack pill to fuel a glorious, high-speed advance. It is now a desperate crutch for survival. You are no longer taking it to feel invincible. You are taking it simply to feel. You take a pill not to stay awake for 3 days to conquer a city, but to stay awake for one more 6-hour shift on guard duty, to stop yourself from drifting into a final, frozen sleep. The effect of the drug in the extreme cold is bizarre and unpredictable. The initial rush of energy is still there, but it feels different. It's a frantic, shivering energy, a desperate attempt by your body to generate warmth. It gives you the strength to keep moving, to stamp your feet and swing your arms, to fight off the encroaching frostbite. But the crash, when it comes, is more terrifying than ever. In the debilitating cold, the exhaustion and depression are magnified tenfold. The hollowed-out feeling is filled with an icy despair. You see men around you falling apart. A soldier in your squad, a quiet boy from Bavaria, is found one morning frozen solid in his sentry post, a half-eaten piece of bread in his hand. He hadn't been attacked. He had simply sat down to rest for a moment, and the cold had taken him. The line between rust and death has become terrifyingly thin. Pervitin becomes the only thing that seems to keep you on the right side of that line. One of the more obscure and desperate measures taken by the Army's Medical Corps during that first winter was the creation of a special cold weather ration. They tried to develop a high-fat food bar, almost like a block of lard, that was supposed to give soldiers extra calories to burn for warmth. But a strange, and perhaps apocryphal, story that circulated among the troops was that some medics were experimenting with mixing Pervitin directly into this greasy, unappetizing mixture. The idea was to create a single product that would provide both caloric energy and a chemical stimulus. A hot meal and a mood in an all-in-one disgusting package. Whether this was ever officially produced on a large scale is doubtful, but the fact that it was even considered speaks volumes about the level of desperation. The nature of the addiction changes, too. Before, you took the pill to achieve a state of euphoria. No, you take it just to feel normal, to escape the profound misery of your reality. The question of whether the Highcommand understood this shift is a point of academic contention. Did they realize their wonder drug was now just a tool to manage a slow-motion disaster? The supply orders don't seem to slow down. The demand from the front is as high as ever. It seems they were willing to use any means necessary to prevent the army from completely collapsing. And if that meant maintaining a massive supply line of methamphetamine to the frozen front, it was a price they were willing to pay. The war grinds on in a series of brutal, defensive battles. The Soviets, dressed in their warm, quilted winter uniforms, launch a massive counteroffensive. They seem to belong to this landscape in a way that you do not. You are no longer the hunter. You are the prey. Your daily reality becomes a grim cycle. You take a pill to get you through the day's fighting, or the night's watch. You fight, you shiver, you survive, then you crash, huddling with your comrades in a shallow, frozen foxhole. The despair a palpable entity among you. And then you wake up, if you wake up at all. And you reach for the tin box to start the cycle all over again. The pill is no longer about victory. It's about postponing defeat. One shivering, artificially stimulated day at a time. The war on the Eastern Front is no longer measured in weeks or months. It is measured in winters. The first, brutal winter of 41 bleeds into the summer of Sishar. Another offensive, more brutal fighting. And then into the even more catastrophic winter of Sishar and Sishisam. The winter of Stalingrad. You are no longer a fresh-faced recruit. You are a veteran, a survivor. But survival has come at a terrible cost. One that is visible on the faces of every man around you. The long-term effects of sustained Pervitin use, combined with the horrors of combat and the grinding physical hardship, have created a new kind of soldier. You see it in their eyes. It's a look that people will later call the 1,000-yard stare. A vacant, detached, unfocused gaze that seems to be looking at something far away, something no one else can see. The men's faces are gaunt. Their skin has a waxy, grey pallor. Their movements are either slow and lethargic, or twitchy and agitated. They have become human wreckage. The psychological effects are even more pronounced. The emotional landscape of the platoon has flattened into a barren, monochrome plain. There are no more euphoric highs. There is only the brief, jittery relief from the gnawing misery, followed by a deeper plunge back into it. The drug no longer provides confidence. It just papers over the cracks of profound, systemic trauma. The men are irritable, prone to sudden, violent outbursts of anger over trivial things. The camaraderie that once held you together has been corroded by paranoia and emotional exhaustion. You see a soldier meticulously cleaning his boots for an hour. Long after they are spotless, his movements robotic and obsessive. You see another talking to himself in low, urgent mumbles. These are not isolated incidents. This is the new normal. The army is populated by ghosts, by men who are physically present but whose minds have retreated to some deep, inaccessible place. They function. They follow orders. They fight. But they are operating on some kind of grim, chemical autopilot. A particularly disturbing, and little known, consequence of the long-term use was its effect on physical health. Medics at the field hospitals started to notice a dramatic increase in certain conditions among veteran soldiers. Heart problems were rampant. Men in their early 20s were having heart attacks. There were also widespread issues with stomach ailments, kidney problems, and severe, chronic headaches. A soldier's body, already ravaged by poor nutrition and stress, was being systematically destroyed from the inside by the very chemical that was supposed to be keeping him effective. The drug that was meant to sustain the soldier was, in fact, accelerating his collapse. Historians and medical ethicists still grapple with the question of responsibility. At what point did the German military's medical corps realize they were not just treating soldiers, but presiding over a mass addiction crisis with catastrophic public health consequences? The evidence suggests that by 1942, many doctors at the front were fully aware of what was happening. They wrote reports detailing the zombie-like state of the troops, the psychosis, the physical decay. But these reports were either ignored by the high command or were deemed an acceptable cost of continuing the war. The goal was no longer to win, but simply not to lose. And if that meant sacrificing the long-term health of an entire generation of its young men, so be it. You are one of these men. You look at your own reflection in a shard of broken mirror and you see a stranger. The face is thin. The eyes are haunted. You can't remember the last time you felt genuine joy or genuine sadness. Your emotional range has narrowed to two states: a state of jittery, anxious stimulation, and a state of numb, depressive exhaustion. You are a shell. You have survived, but you wonder what part of you is actually left. The Blitzkrieg is a distant memory, a story about a different army, a different person. The reality now is this: a slow, grinding war of attrition, fought by detached, zombie-like figures, shuffling through the mud and snow of the endless Russian steppe. The tide of the war has turned. The catastrophic defeat at Stalingrad was the breaking point. Now, the German army is no longer advancing. It is retreating, a slow, bloody, fighting retreat across the same vast plains you conquered with such arrogant speed 2 years ago. The roles have been reversed. Now it is you who are being encircled. You who are being pushed back. As the Allies, the Soviets in the East, the Americans and British in the West, now that they have landed in Italy and are preparing for France, begin to overrun German positions. They start to discover the secret of your sleepless energy. A British commando team, raiding a German coastal radar station in France, finds a small tin box in the pocket of a dead sentry. Inside are the little white pills. An American infantryman, clearing out a captured concrete bunker in Sicily, finds entire crates of them, neatly stacked next to the ammunition. At first, they don't know what they found. The pills are sent back to military intelligence and forensic labs for analysis. The reports that come back are a revelation. The Allied commanders are stunned to learn that the German army has been systematically issuing methamphetamine to its troops on an industrial scale. It explains so much. It explains the impossible speed of the Blitzkrieg in 1940. It explains the fanatical, sleepless resistance of some German units. It's like finding a hidden page in the enemy's playbook. The discovery is a source of intense debate within the Allied command. The immediate question is, should we use it too? The British and American military had, as you know, already been experimenting with their own amphetamine, NZ right, for pilots and special forces, but the sheer scale of the German operation gives them pause. Some argue that to compete on the modern battlefield, they have no choice but to adopt similar measures. Others, particularly in the medical corps, are horrified. They see the German practice not as a military innovation, but as a moral and medical travesty. They point to the potential for addiction and the long-term health consequences. One of the more curious outcomes of this discovery was a brief, but intense, period of pharmacological espionage. Allied intelligence became obsessed with the German wonder drugs. They interrogated captured German medics and scientists, trying to find out everything they could about Pervitin, its production, and its effects. They were particularly interested in the rumors of even more powerful stimulants being developed. It was a new, hidden front in the war, a battle of chemistry. This allied discovery is a subject that still fascinates historians. The key point of discussion is why the Allies, despite knowing what the Germans were doing, chose not to replicate it on the same scale. The consensus is a mix of ethical and practical reasons. The command structure of the Allied armies was, in general, more concerned with the long-term welfare of the individual soldier. There was a stronger tradition of medical ethics that recoiled from the idea of mass drugging their own men. But there was also a practical consideration. The Allies were winning the war through industrial might, overwhelming air power, and superior logistics. They didn't need to resort to such desperate measures. They could afford to let their soldiers sleep. The German army's reliance on Pervitin was, in a way, a sign of its fundamental weakness, not its strength. You are, of course, completely unaware of these high-level debates. You are a German soldier being pushed back towards your own borders. But you start to feel the effects of the Allied discovery in a very real way. The supply lines, which were once a torrent of men, machines, and pills, are now just a trickle. Allied bombers are systematically destroying the factories, the railways, and the roads. The crates of Pervitin no longer arrive with the same regularity. For the first time in years, you are forced to fight on your own dwindling reserves of energy. You are forced to face the exhaustion, the fear, and the misery without your chemical shield. The withdrawal is agony, a constant, dull ache of body and mind. Then you realize a terrible irony. The wonder drug that was supposed to guarantee you victory has now become just another weakness for the enemy to exploit. They are not just destroying your tanks and your airplanes. They are destroying your supply of courage itself. As the Reich crumbles, the man at its very center is also falling apart. The Führer, Adolf Hitler. His image is still everywhere, on posters, in newspapers. His voice still crackling over the radio with promises of final victory and secret weapons. But the reality, whispered in the corridors of power and in the bunkers deep beneath Berlin, is very different. The leader of the nation, the man who demanded superhuman performance from his soldiers, is himself a wreck, propped up by a bizarre and dangerous chemical cocktail. You, as a common soldier, don't know the specifics, but the rumors are impossible to ignore. They travel from the officers' messes to the field hospitals to the front-line trenches. You hear that the Führer's hands tremble uncontrollably, that his skin has a grey, unhealthy pallor, that he shuffles when he walks and his voice, once so powerful, is now often a weak, reedy thing, the man on the newsreels, filmed from carefully chosen angles. Looks nothing like the wreck described in the whispers. The source of these rumors, and the center of Hitler's strange medical world, is a man named Theodor Morell. He is Hitler's personal physician. To most of the Nazi high command, Morell is a quack, a charlatan who has gained an unhealthy influence over the Führer. But to Hitler, he is a miracle worker, the only man who can alleviate his growing list of ailments, from stomach cramps to exhaustion to anxiety. And Morell's method is simple. Injections. Every day, sometimes multiple times a day, he injects Hitler with a bewildering array of substances. His medical diaries, which were later discovered, read like a pharmacologist's nightmare. He administered everything from vitamins and hormones to animal organ extracts. But the cornerstone of his treatment, especially as the military situation worsened, was a continuous supply of powerful stimulants. There's a particularly strange detail in Morell's diaries about a substance he called Vitamulti-N. It sounds harmless, like a multivitamin, but it was oft unlaced with Pervitin. So while Hitler may have believed he was getting a simple vitamin boost, he was, in fact, getting a regular dose of methamphetamine. And when that wasn't enough, Morell would move on to more powerful substances, including a drug called DuoCoda-L, a synthetic opioid with euphoric effects similar to heroin, and even, according to some accounts, injections of cocaine to treat ear and throat pain. The Führer was, in essence, a high-functioning addict. His moods and energy levels dictated by the contents of Doc. Moral syringe. The historical debate surrounding Hitler and moral is intense. Was Hitler a patient being treated, however poorly, for genuine ailments? Or was he a junkie? His decisions increasingly influenced by the euphoric highs and paranoid crashes of drug abuse. Many historians, like Hans Mommsen, argue that we should be careful not to overstate the case, suggesting that Hitler's destructive ideology and decisions were his own, and not simply the product of drugs. Others, like Norman Ohler, whose work brought this topic to a wider audience, argue that his drug use is central to understanding his behavior in the final years of the war. They suggest his increasing paranoia, his detachment from reality, and his refusal to accept defeat were all classic symptoms of a man in the grip of long-term amphetamine and opioid abuse. You can see the reflection of this in the grand strategy of the war, the increasingly erratic decisions, the refusal to allow strategic retreats, ordering armies to stand and fight to the last man, a decision that led directly to the disaster at Stalingrad, the belief in wonder weapons that would miraculously turn the tide. It is the mindset of a gambler on a losing streak, convinced the next card will be the winner. It's also the mindset of an addict, chasing a high that will never come again. So as you huddle in a foxhole, your own supply of Pervitin dwindling, you are unknowingly mirroring the state of your supreme commander. The entire war effort, from the lone soldier at the front to the Führer in his bunker, is trapped in the same desperate cycle of chemical dependency. The nation is being led by a man whose reality is being filtered through a haze of stimulants and opioids, administered by a quack doctor. It is a grim, surreal, and terrifying thought. The whole vast, catastrophic enterprise is being driven by a man who is no longer in control of himself, let alone his armies. The war is hopelessly lost, but surrender is not an option. In the twisted logic of the crumbling regime, the only answer to impending defeat is to demand even more from the human material that remains. If Pervitin is no longer enough to turn the tide, then a new, more powerful drug must be created. The demand for a miracle weapon extends from rockets and jets to the very chemistry of the soldier's body. The order goes out to a group of pharmacologists, led by a man named Gerhard Orzechowski, in the northern port city of Kiel. The directive is chillingly clear: create a new pill, a super drug, that will push soldiers even further beyond their natural limits. The scientists are to disregard all concerns for side effects, addiction, or the long-term health of the user. The only goal is short-term, superhuman performance. This is not about winning the war anymore. It's about enabling a final, fanatical act of resistance. The scientists get to work. They take a Pervitin tablet as their base, the tried and tested methamphetamine core, but they begin to add other ingredients, creating a monstrous chemical cocktail. The final formulation is a single, chewing gum-sized tablet. It contains 5 milligrams of EUA-L, the powerful opioid that Dr. Morrell was giving to Hitler. This provides a potent pain-killing and euphoric effect, designed to make the user feel no pain and no fear. To this, they add 5 milligrams of cocaine. The cocaine, sourced from the dwindling pre-war medical stockpiles, provides an intense, albeit short-lived, burst of energy and confidence. And finally, they add 3 milligrams of Pervitin, the methamphetamine, to provide the long-tail endurance and wake of signals. They call this new pill D-IX. It is, by any definition, a weapon of mass self-destruction, a way to burn out a soldier in a final, brilliant, and suicidal flash of chemically induced fury. It is a one-way ticket. The testing phase for D-IX is the stuff of nightmares. With the army in tatters, they can't simply test it on regular soldiers, so they turn to the last resource available: the prisoners of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, just outside Berlin. In a grotesque perversion of scientific research, a group of prisoners is selected, They are given the D-IX tablets and then forced to march on a circular track in the camp's courtyard. They are loaded with heavy packs and forced to walk, and walk, without rest. The SS guards watch, taking notes. The results are, from their perspective, a stunning success. The prisoners march for up to 24 hours straight, covering over 55 miles, before collapsing. The drug works. It can turn a broken man into a temporary marching machine. The debate among historians about D-IX is a dark one. Was this a serious, large-scale plan to re-equip the entire army with a new super drug? Or was it a more limited, desperate experiment for use in specific, last-ditch operations? The evidence suggests the latter. The war was ending too quickly. The supply lines too shorted to produce and distribute D-IX on a massive scale. The plan was likely to give it to specific units, SS commandos, submarine crews, the last remnants of the elite forces, to enable them to perform suicidal werewolf missions behind Allied lines. For you, shivering in a trench on the collapsing front, D-IX is just another rumor, a ghost story whispered in the dark. You hear tales of a new anti-fear pill, a magic tablet that will make the last stand glorious. It's a myth, a desperate hope for a miracle that will never come. But the very existence of the D-IX project reveals the final, logical endpoint of the entire Pervitin experiment. It began with a pill to make you a little more efficient. It progressed to a pill to make you a better soldier. And it ends with a pill designed to make you a better martyr. It is the complete and utter negation of the individual, a final chemical declaration that your life has no value beyond its last, desperate, drug-fueled act. The search for a wonder weapon has led them to this, a pill that will help you die for a lost cause, and feel nothing at all. The war is no longer being fought on distant steppes or in foreign fields. It is being fought in the rubble of German cities and on the very shores of the homeland. The verse, organized armies have been shattered, replaced by a patchwork of desperate resistance. And in this final, thus a Demerang phase of the war, the most desperate plans are put into motion. This is where the D-IX super drug was meant to find its purpose. The German Navy, the Kriegsammersee, has been all but swept from the sea. Its great battleships are sunk or bottled up in port. But a small, fanatical branch of the Navy, known as the Cave-Open, is determined to fight on. Their idea is to use new, technologically crude but psychologically terrifying weapons. One-man submarines and explosive motorboats. These are, for all intents and purposes, suicide missions. A young man is sealed into a tiny, coffin-like submersible, with a torpedo strapped to its side. His job is to navigate the treacherous coastal waters, evade Allied patrols, and attack the massive fleet supporting the invasion of Europe. The challenges are immense. The pilot has to stay awake, alert, and focused for up to 48 hours, cramped in a tiny, claustrophobic space. Choked by gasoline fumes, tossed about by the waves, he has to do this alone, in the dark, hunted by an overwhelmingly superior enemy. The physical and psychological strain is unimaginable. This is the perfect test case for the new wonder drug. So in the final months of the war, the D-IX cocktail, the pill containing methamphetamine, cocaine, and a powerful opioid, is issued to these young naval commandos. You can imagine the scene. A boy of 18 or 19, his face pale in the dim light of the submarine pen, being handed a piece of chewing gum laced with a chemical concoction designed to turn him into a fearless, sleepless automaton. He is told it will keep him sharp, keep him from feeling the cold, keep the fear at bay. The results are tragic and grotesque. The drug does, in some cases, allow the pilots to endure the inhuman conditions of their missions, but it also produces catastrophic side effects. The combination of sensory deprivation, extreme stress, and a powerful psychoactive cocktail induces severe hallucinations. Pilots would report seeing phantom enemy ships, or imagine they were being attacked when they were not. They would become disoriented, unable to distinguish between reality and a drug-fueled nightmare. One pilot reported seeing a flock of birds flying underwater. Another surfaced his vessel in the middle of an Allied convoy, believing he was in a safe harbor. A particularly grim and strange detail comes from the post-mission debriefings of the few who survived. The pilots would often have no memory of large chunks of their mission. They would describe a state of detached, dreamlike awareness, as if they were watching someone else operate the controls. The drug had succeeded in erasing their fear, but it had also erased their judgment, their situational awareness, and in some cases, their very souls. The historical debate over the cave urban and its use of D-IX centers on its effectiveness. Was it a genuine military threat, or a pointless and tragic waste of young lives? The consensus is overwhelmingly the latter. While these one-man torpedoes did manage to sink a handful of Allied ships, their impact on the overall war was zero. They were a nuisance, not a strategic weapon. The program was a testament to the regime's final, fanatical belief that individual will, chemically enhanced, could somehow overcome overwhelming material disadvantage. It was a fatal delusion. You are miles away from the coast, caught up in the chaos of the land war. But the story of the cave urban is a microcosm of your own. It is the story of a military that, having lost its technological and strategic edge, turned to pharmacology as a last resort. It is a story of how young men, in the final moments of a lost war, were not just asked to sacrifice their lives, but were chemically altered to do so without fear or hesitation. It is the ultimate expression of a system that saw the human body as just another piece of equipment, to be fueled, pushed to its breaking point, and ultimately discarded. The end comes not with a single, decisive battle, but with the slow, grinding collapse of the entire system. The miracle weapons fail to appear. The final, fanatical resistance crumbles, and the chemical engine that has fueled the war machine for 6 long years finally sputters and dies. A key reason for this is happening high above you, in skies now completely dominated by the Allies. The relentless bombing campaign, which for years had targeted cities and military installations, now turns its attention to the very infrastructure of production. And one of its targets is a place you heard about a lifetime ago. The TMML factory in Berlin's Adlerhorst district, the birthplace of Pervitin. You can picture the scene. The air raid sirens wail across the ruined city. The workers at the TMML plant, who for years have been diligently pressing millions of methamphetamine tablets, rush to the shelters. Then comes the familiar, terrifying whistle of falling bombs. The ground shakes. The buildings that once gleamed with scientific ambition are torn apart, their brick facades collapsing into piles of rubble. The laboratories, the production lines, the warehouses full of the rock chemicals and the finished pills, they all go up in smoke. The destruction of the TMML factory is a symbolic and practical death blow. It's not the only plant producing stimulants for the war effort, but it is the heart of the operation, with its destruction, and the bombing of other key chemical plants and transportation hubs. The supply line that has sustained the German army for so long is severed at its source. The effect on the front lines is immediate and profound. The trickle of supplies, which had already slowed to almost nothing, now stops completely. The NCOS no longer have tins of pills to hand out before a counterattack. The medics in the field stations have nothing to offer the exhausted, traumatized soldiers but a few paper bandages and empty words of encouragement. The chemical crutch that the army has leaned on for years is suddenly kicked away. One of the lesser known, but significant, targets of the Allied bombing campaign was Germany's pharmaceutical and chemical industry as a whole. Firms like IG Farben and Merck, which were central to the production of everything from explosives to synthetic rubber to, yes, drugs, were identified as critical strategic targets. The bombing of these facilities was not just about stopping the production of Pervitin. It was about crippling the entire technological and industrial base of the Nazi state. This is a point historians often emphasize. The war was ultimately won not by super soldiers, but by superior industrial capacity. The Allies could build more planes, more tanks, and more bombs than the Germans could ever hope to destroy. And they could use those planes and bombs to destroy the very factories that produced the enemy's own tools of war. The final days are a blur of chaos and confusion. Your unit, which has long since ceased to be a coherent fighting force, simply dissolves. Some men desert, trying to melt away and make their way home. Others fight on in small, isolated pockets of resistance. Their actions born of fanaticism or simple fear of what will happen if they are captured. But for most, like you, the end comes with a profound, bone-deep weariness. The absence of the drug reveals the true state of your body and mind. The accumulated exhaustion of years of sleeplessness and stress comes crashing down on you all at once. The chronic aches, the tremors, the constant, low-level anxiety. There is nothing to numb them anymore. You are left alone with the wreckage of yourself. In a small, ruined village in what is left of Germany, you and a handful of others are surrounded by American soldiers. They are young, well-fed, and look impossibly clean. They carry their weapons with a casual confidence you haven't felt in years. There is no final, glorious battle. Your commanding officer, a gaunt, hollow-eyed man who has seen too much, simply raises a white flag. It is over. The factory is in ruins. The supply is gone. The war is lost. The war ends not with a bang, but with a quiet, bewildered silence. One moment, you are a soldier in the German army. The next, you are a disarmed enemy combatant, a prisoner of war. You are herded with thousands of other men in worn, grey-green uniforms into vast, open-air enclosures. These are the Rhine-Wiesenlager, the Rhine meadow camps, huge fields, hastily fenced off with barbed wire, where the defeated remnants of the Wehrmacht are held under the grey, indifferent sky. There is no shelter. You sleep on the bare ground, exposed to the rain and the cold spring nights. The food is meager. A piece of bread, a bowl of thin soup if you're really lucky. But the worst part is not the hunger or the cold. It's the stillness. For 6 years, your life has been one of constant motion, of orders, of fighting, of chemically induced energy. Now, there is nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to tell you what to do next. There is only the endless, empty time, and the quiet, agonizing process of withdrawal. Your body, which has been running on a chemical fuel for as long as you can remember, is now forced to run on its own. The crash is not the short, brutal plunge you experienced after a 3-day push. It is a long, slow, grinding descent into a deep, dark valley. Every joint in your body aches. You are plagued by a constant, pounding headache. You are either unable to sleep at all, your mind racing with disjointed, nightmarish images, or you fall into a heavy, leaden slumber from which you wake feeling even more exhausted. You look at the men around you. They are all going through the same private hell. They are listless, apathetic. They sit for hours, staring at nothing. Their faces are slack, their eyes dull. The master race has become a tribe of ghosts, haunted by the chemical legacy of the war. The slightest noise can make a man jump. The slightest frustration can lead to a sudden, inexplicable outburst of rage, followed by tears of exhaustion. This is mass withdrawal, on a scale never seen before. A strange and little documented aspect of this period was the reaction of the Allied medics. They were overwhelmed. They had been trained to deal with battle wounds, with shrapnel, with bullet holes, with broken bones. They had no framework for dealing with hundreds of thousands of men suffering from the long-term effects of chronic amphetamine abuse combined with severe post-traumatic stress. There were no protocols, no treatments. They would see a prisoner with a wildly irregular heartbeat or uncontrollable tremors and have no idea that the root cause was not a battlefield injury, but a pill he had been taking for years. The historical discussion around the Rhine meadow camps is fraught with controversy. Conditions were horrific. and many thousands of prisoners died from malnutrition and disease. Some critics have accused the Allies, particularly the Americans, of deliberately creating these harsh conditions as a form of retribution. The official Allied position, however, was that the logistical challenge of dealing with millions of surrendered German soldiers in a country whose infrastructure had been completely destroyed made these conditions unavoidable. The truth is likely a messy combination of both. But what is undeniable is that for the soldiers suffering from Pervitin withdrawal, these camps were brutal, and for some, fatal. Pace to land. Days blur into weeks. You lose track of time. Your world shrinks to the barbed wire fence in the muddy ground beneath your feet. The war, the Blitzkrieg, the victories, the defeats. It all feels like a fever dream. A story that happened to someone else. The only reality is the gnawing hunger, the deep, persistent ache in your bones, and the fog in your mind. Slowly, very slowly, things begin to change. Your body, with the stubborn resilience of a living organism, begins to heal itself. The headaches become less frequent. You start to sleep for a few hours at a time. The fog in your mind begins to lift. Just a little. You are being weaned off the drug by the harshest method imaginable. Cold turkey, in a field of mud. It's a quiet, unheroic, and deeply personal battle, fought in the ruins of a defeated nation. It is the last battle of your war. The years pass. The world rebuilds itself from the rubble. The barbed wire of the POW camp is eventually taken down, and you are released. A ghost returning to a country you no longer recognize. Germany is divided, occupied. The great, monolithic Reich that you were told would last for 1,000 years is gone, replaced by the slow, painful work of reconstruction and denazification. You try to build a new life, to find work, to start a family. You try to forget. But one day, you are walking down a street in West Berlin, and you see a familiar name on a pharmacy sign. Hello. The name hits you like a physical blow. You stop and stare at the clean, modern building, the company that produced the little white pills that defined your youth. That fueled your war is still here. It's still in business. This is perhaps the most surreal and unsettling part of the entire story. The TMML company, the architects of Pervitin, managed to navigate the turbulent post-war years with remarkable success. They were, after all, a legitimate pharmaceutical company. Pervitin was just one of their products. During the post-war trials, the company's executives argued, successfully, that they were simply fulfilling contracts for the German government. They were not responsible, they claimed, for how the Wehrmacht chose to use their product. They were just suppliers, not military strategists. And so, the company continued. In the years after the war, Pervitin was once again marketed to the German public, though now it required a prescription. It was sold as a treatment for depression, for anxiety, for a range of psychological ailments. The same pill that sent the panzers storming through the Ardennes was now being prescribed to help housewives cope with post-war stress. It's an irony so profound it borders on the absurd. A particularly strange detail of this post-war period is that Pervitin even found a niche use in the world of sports, just as it had been inspired by athletes in the 1936 Olympics. The drug found its way back into the athletic world. There are documented cases of German cyclists and football players in the 1950 seconds and 60 seconds using Pervitin as a performance-enhancing drug, a way to fight off fatigue during a long race or a grueling match. The people's pill had a remarkable ability to adapt and survive. The debate among historians about corporate complicity is a complex one. Was the TMML company a victim of circumstance, forced to cooperate with a totalitarian regime? Or were they willing and enthusiastic partners, blinded by profit and ambition? The consensus leans towards the latter. While they may not have been ideologues, they were savvy opportunists who saw a massive market and exploited it. turning a blind eye to the devastating consequences. Their ability to rebrand themselves and their product after the war is a testament to a collective desire to forget, to move on, to not ask too many uncomfortable questions about the past. It wasn't until the 1982 that Pervitin was finally taken off the market for good in Germany, its reputation finally catching up with its history. You stand on that Berlin street, a middle-aged man now, with the ghosts of the past swirling around you. You see the clean cars driving by, the well-dressed people going about their day in the new, prosperous West Germany. It's a world away from the mud of the Eastern Front and the despair of the POW camp. And yet, the thread connects it all. The thread leads back to that building, to the company that forgot, or chose to forget, its role in the great catastrophe. You feel a phantom ache in your bones, a memory of the crash. You remember the false confidence, the manufactured courage, the deep, hollow emptiness that followed, and you realize that while the country has been rebuilt, some ruins are invisible. They are the ruins inside the men who survived. The company got to rebrand itself. You just had to live with the damage. You turn and walk away, leaving the sign and the building behind you, a silent monument to a past that is not as dead as it seems. You are an old man now. Your hair is white. Your hands are spotted with age. You live in a quiet apartment, filled with the gentle light of a peaceful afternoon. The world outside is a cacophony of new technologies and new anxieties, most of which you don't understand. Your more, the more of your youth, is now the stuff of history books and documentaries on television. It's a story told in black and white, a tale of monsters and heroes, of grand strategies and epic battles. But for you, the story is not so simple. It is a story of chemistry, of a tiny white pill that promised to make you a Superman, and instead nearly erased you. When you look back, what do you see? You reflect on the very idea of a secret weapon. The regime was obsessed with them. The V-2 rocket, the jet fighter, the super heavy tank, they were all technological solutions to a spiritual problem. A belief that some clever invention could cheat fate and reverse a tide that was already flowing inexorably against them. And Pervitin, you realize, was the ultimate expression of that delusion. It was a secret weapon aimed not at the enemy, but at your own soldiers. It was based on the belief that the primary limitation of an army was the humanity of the men who filled its ranks. Their need for sleep, their fear, their exhaustion. These were not seen as natural human traits, but as flaws to be corrected with chemistry. The drug was a weapon designed to conquer human nature itself. And for a time, it seemed to work. It fueled the Blitzkrieg. It created the Ghost Division. It gave you and your comrades the energy to perform impossible feats. But it was a false victory. The weapon that never really was. It was a loan taken out against your own body and mind. And the interest rates were astronomical. It didn't make you a better soldier. It just made you a more efficient machine for a short period of time, before that machine inevitably broke down. A strange, final, quirky detail from the post-war era puts a final, ironic cap on the story. In the decades following the war, methamphetamine, the very substance that made up Pervitin, would sweep across the world as a notorious and destructive street drug, the miracle product of German pharmaceutical science. Once hailed as a tool of national revitalization, became a symbol of addiction and social decay. The weapon designed to build an empire ended up as a substance that destroyed lives in back alleys and trailer parks. The journey was complete. The academic debate about Pervitin's role in the war will likely never end. Was it a decisive factor, or a minor footnote? Did it prolong the war, or hasten its disastrous end by promoting reckless and delusional strategies? There are compelling arguments on all sides. Some historians will continue to focus on the genius of the generals or the fanaticism of the ideology, but others will insist that you cannot understand the texture of the Second World War, the feel of being a German soldier, without understanding the role of that little pill. It was the ghost in the machine, the invisible fuel that powered the initial victories and deepened the final catastrophic collapse. You sit in your armchair as the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the room. You think of Klaus from Hamburg, with his manic grin. You think of the frozen sentry in Russia. You think of the haunted, thousand-yard stairs in the POW camp. They were all victims of that weapon. A weapon that promised to create Superman, but which only succeeded in creating ghosts. It was a short-term fix that contributed to a long-term disaster, a perfect metaphor for the regime it served. The energy was dazzling. The confidence was absolute. The crash was total. And the damage was permanent. And so, the story slowly, gently, comes to its final rest. The energy of the tale begins to fade, like the last effects of a powerful medicine, leaving behind only a quiet, peaceful calm. The sharp edges of the day have softened, and the world outside has dimmed to a gentle murmur. You can feel a pleasant heaviness in your limbs, a sense of your body letting go, sinking just a little deeper into the support beneath you. The need to follow the narrative is gone now. The words have done their work, clearing a soft path for you, a path that leads away from the world of thought and into the quiet, open landscapes of your own subconscious mind. You are drifting now, on a slow, easy current, far from the shores of wakefulness. There is nothing left to do, nothing at all. Simply allow this feeling of deep, comfortable rest to envelop you completely. The final word has been whispered. If your mind is still gently stirring, you're welcome to drift into another of my stories. If not, I wish you a deep and peaceful slumber. Good night.